Is your business struggling to find solutions to the problems you face every day? Well, in this episode, discover how you can use pattern breaking to unlock creative solutions to your problems. Hi, and welcome to Radiant Business Podcast. This is your host, Jason Ross. I'm a web developer and a digital marketer with over 11 years of experience in working with small and medium businesses, creating high conversion websites with search engine optimization. Joining me today is one of my colleagues at Radiant Freedom Digital Marketing, Yavor Yankov.
And hi, my name is Yavor. I am an English and history student at Simon Fraser University. And I'm also a member of the Radiant Freedom Digital Marketing sales team. And I also work as a copywriter. Today's guest is Michelel James, founder of Creative Emergence and author of Pattern Breaks, who helps entrepreneurs break free from conventional thinking and tap into their authentic creativity. Michelel, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. Yes, I founded the Center for Creative Emergence over 20 years ago, and I work with corporations and leaders and nonprofits and government agencies and entrepreneurs around moving through breaking their patterns and creating new possibilities. Creatively. One of the signatures of my company is everything we do is highly experiential and very whole brain. So it's not just left brain dominant talking through it. The pattern breaking ways we'll use is, could be, we use storytelling, visual thinking, movement, improv, principles and practices from improv, principles and practices from applied creativity, all kinds of different types of ways. So, I'm happy to be here and see where this conversation takes us.
Now, that is one thing that really caught my interest when I was first looking at your website and we had our first conversation, over Google Meet together was, the fact that you're working with, creativity, because something that I didn't mention in my intro is I am also working on a creative project on my own on the side, which is a fantasy novel called Noel's Honor. So, that creativity is something that's extremely important to me. I also work with creative people in my alternate business, Radiant Media Developers, as well, where we have like game developers, writers, artists, animators, voice actors, all that type of people in there. And so I'm with creative people on a daily basis. So
nice.
Sometimes they run into creative blocks in their art form.
Absolutely.
I could definitely see utility in what you do working with artists as well as entrepreneurs. But, you mentioned pattern breaks, and you also have a book by that exact title. So maybe talk a little bit about, how that works.
Well, sure. My book is right here, actually, Facilitator's Guide to Cultivating Creativity. Just to first go back to something you said, working with a lot of creative people, and huge congrats on writing your book. That's awesome. The one thing in my work is is every single person's creative. Not everybody does a creative field. And a lot of part of my work is to get us into the mindset that every single person is already really creative. Not everyone's an artist. Not everyone might be a course creator. Not everyone's a writer, but everyone has some type of creativity. So a lot of my work, one of the patterns, that we first break is getting people, anyone who doesn't already think they're creative, to know that they are already creative. They might have been told that someone else in the family was the creative one and they're the one good at math or good at computers or whatever. But part of the work I do is to help people actualize their creativity and find it and go break the conditioning of that there are creative people and there are others that we all are creative. We might not all be talented in the arts, in different arts. So pattern breaks is one of the things when I was writing the book and noticed over the years of doing this work is that when I sat and I thought about everything that I learned over the years of working with creative process, what was one of the most things that all creative processes had in common, and that was a break in a pattern. Something was one way, something happened, whether it was consciously by choice engaging it or life, something even unwanted or something else happened, and then something became another way. So there was a break in a pattern break. And so we've all experienced pattern breaks in our lives that may not have been wanted, that we did not ask for. But historically, that's actually brought on a lot of creativity. My work specifically is around conscious pattern breaking, low risk, low stakes pattern breaking, so that you become very adept in high risk, high stakes pattern breaking, both to become more creative and also more resilient and adaptive in life.
And that's actually really interesting, Ibrahim, because I actually deal with that in my own line of work in web development. Because one of the things I do is I'll review websites to make sure that they're have the right contents, design, layout to convert properly. And a lot of that is about breaking the pattern of just every time you go to, say, a massage therapist website, you're always seeing all the same things, as opposed to what I do is I then look at how do you break the pattern? Well, you start with the headlines and craft a creative headline that addresses a key core pain, fear, frustration, or problem that a person has. Well, in the example of a massage website, well, what's the problem that people are having? Is they're having some form of physical pain usually. So address that physical pain and let them know that, hey, we have a solution coming up on this website. So you break the person's pattern and get their attention and engage them in finding out more about that solution. And
yeah.
Now, interesting, when we're discussing ideas for this episode, you actually mentioned something about divergent and emergent thinking. Maybe you could tell us a little more about that and how someone could a little exercise someone could do to help improve that in their own daily thinking.
Sure. Well, and what you just said is, good marketing, from my understanding, is really about breaking the pattern. That's how you, in the attention economy, that's how you get attention. If you're helping a client as a marketing person, if you're helping your client and you help them, their marketing break a pattern, and more people will pay attention. Like, oh, wait, what? And then now you have their attention and you can market them. So, we were talking about divergence and convergence, every creative, another universal principle. One is creative acts are part of a break in a pattern. Another is all creative processes have some sort of divergence and convergence in them. A lot of times people go to meetings, or they'll even try to do creative thinking sessions, and they never leave convergence. They'll go, all right, here's the data. We've analyzed the data. Now we're going to make sense of it. We're going to organize it. And those are all convergent activities. One of the hallmarks of creative thinking is going into divergence first, and what we call divergent space, where there's no evaluation, no judgment. You suspend it. You're literally holding it open. You're holding an open space where new ideas can emerge. And so there are principles or conditions that allow you to stay in divergent space, whether you're doing it by yourself or with a group. Suspend judgment for a certain amount of time. So that means one of the things that blocks creativity is our quickness to get into meaning making. We want to make meaning. And so a lot of very intelligent people can make meaning very quickly. In divergent space, you want to hold out and you want to allow non-judgmental, non-evaluative space to explore and discover. It's an exploration space. It's a discovery space. And you want to allow that space. So you're diverging, you're playing with ideas You're imagining, what if, and what would this happen, and how about if we tried this? You're turning ideas over. You're allowing things to be bad ideas. You're allowing nonsensical to happen, and then for a certain amount of time period, and then you might say, all right, now I'm going to converge. What is it that I want to create? And then you go back into convergence, and it's in convergence that you then choose, discern of the new ideas. Like a divergent space, you're mining the creating playing field. You're getting new ideas. You're playing with, you're taking things out to iterations that you normally in our day we don't give our space for.
Yeah, including thinking outside the box and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And convergence, then you go back into sense making. So then you might say, all right, how does it fit into this thing I'm trying to solve? What were the parameters of the problem? What are the constraints? Then, so in divergence, you go bust out. There's no constraints. You just bust out, explore, discover, play with, imagine. Then divergence, come back, put the constraints on. And the difference is now you have new and different ideas that you wouldn't have had if you only stayed in convergence.
So how could you convince a busy entrepreneur to intentionally create that space without feeling like they're wasting time?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. And in fact, I've seen that happen so many times. And again, that actually is its own little block in itself. Somebody will be like, I'm so busy. I have so much to do. I can't waste time in just, diverging and imagining random things. So I would say, once you get in the habit of divergence and you see the value, then it's easy. Then you naturally will want to do it. But in the beginning, I would say, do it, go for a walk without a phone or without, do a digital detox time where you literally unplug from everything. Maybe you start with a 10-minute walk or a half-hour walk or a 1-hour walk or a hike or just when you're in the shower, get intentional. Or maybe you sit down to journal and just say, for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes or hour, I'm not going to have any other input, and I'm just going to allow myself to be in divergent space. And I would say when you first try it out, give yourself a lot of leeway because it may feel awkward. If you're in, you will have the beta brain come in going, oh my God, we're so busy. We got to get back to this client. We have to make this call. We have to do, and I just say, yeah. And, but one other thing to say about it, that you also want to do in divergent space, the other thing you want to do is you want to have something purposeful that you're diverging around. So it works really well if you have an intention. So for example, if you just say divergent space, I'm just going to journal, then that's more free writing, free flow. That's always healthy, but that's very much creative self-expression. But let's say you thought, I want to design a new program. I want to design a new marketing system. I want to design something new. Then you know what it is. Go into divergent space and just start imagining. What might that look like? And then there's all kinds of, you could actually Google, there's tons of questions on, ask yourself some questions that are non-habitual questions, like what would the worst case scenario be? And then you start playing with the opposites. You start breaking your questioning pattern, and that will start to take you into new divergent spaces. But the number one thing is give yourself space, time, and attention.
Would you say that it's actually a good idea to make that divergent space in your work schedule? Or do you think it should be more free for all kind of thing?
Well, ideally both. So definitely free flow. I mean, there have been so many studies that show that when people don't put pressure on something, like when there are, so many inventions have come from when someone's in the shower, or they're taking a walk, or they're doing something completely different, or they have a dream, and all of a sudden, so many inventions have come from just like dream, and then somebody, has a dream journal, they put it together.
So many inventions have also come from, they're trying to invent one thing and then they make a mistake and it ends up inventing a completely different thing, or a related thing. And the inventor had the presence of mind to realize that, well, this didn't do the thing I wanted it to do, but what it did do is still useful.
Yeah. I think like Velcro was that,
Yeah,
absolutely.
actually, Post-it notes were that because so somebody was trying to invent a new type of glue. The glue was a failure because it was too not sticky enough. Then they realized, but that's perfect for if you're wanting to just have a semi-sticky note that you can stick against something to maybe for reminder or bookmark or something like that. And
Absolutely. So you're bringing up, which is another super essential point around in the creative mindset, is so that person, when one experiment didn't work out, some people would go, okay, I guess that failed. It didn't work. And someone else might go like, wow, it didn't work in the way I imagined it, but how else might I apply it? That opens back up divergent space. So sometimes you're converging, you find out something you thought would work, it wasn't a good idea, but then all of a sudden so the key was whoever did it, they stayed open enough, in discovery mindset, which is part of the divergent mindset. They stayed in discovery enough to go, all right, it didn't work to what I thought it would be. They're not saying, I guess I should never invent again. I guess I'm just not designed to ever. No, this, okay, then how might we apply it?
or that was a waste of time and
Right,
money
not
or something like that.
exactly. Instead of like, so the most prolific creators are not the ones that see mistakes as failures. They see mistakes as invitations to learn, or leap off points, or learning. Okay, we learned what did not work, so next time we'll try that. But it's the relationships to mistakes and the relationships to quote failure. But again, I say quote because every failure could be an invitation to a new creation, but it's the relationships to that make a difference of how prolific someone's going to be around their creativity. It's not intelligence, everyone's creative, it's really the relationship to how much divergent space they allow, and that they don't have judgment around their mistakes. They can reframe them and see them as iterations toward what can work.
Yeah, and another thing that you brought up earlier, which brought to mind the common scenario that can happen, say in a business meeting, is the group of people come together to meet, discuss a project or solve a problem, and what can often happen is if they get stuck in convergent space, you can end up getting them stuck in what's known as groupthink, where
Yeah.
one person gives an idea and everyone all just starts agreeing to each other
Mhm.
with each other and nobody questions anything, and that can lead to disastrous decisions.
Exactly. In fact, I have, even in my book, I have this model like where groupthink, the whole is less than the sum of the parts, and group co-creation, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
So in an emergence, it's like that. So yeah, so what you want to do is groupthink is almost the opposite of co-creation, because so you have to, this goes back to the conditions. You have to make it safe. If you're leading a team or an organization, or if you're an entrepreneur and have a small team, or even in your own self, you're making it safe to explore without consequence. So because otherwise you get groupthink. Groupthink is often someone doesn't want to stand out, so they don't question assumptions because they might not feel safe in doing it. They may feel there are consequences. They may feel if they go against the grain, they will be judged or evaluated, poorly, or lose their job. So, but group co-creation, like you see that in complete improv. I spent 20 years in improv theater, and I do a lot of applied improv workshops in organizations using principles and practices from improv. 25 years actually, and it's all group co-creation. Someone will say something, so in divergent space, you accept it, add something new, accept it, add something new. And that's a way of breaking out of groupthink. You create conditions you make it acceptable for a certain amount of time to go into divergent space. And that's one way to break out of groupthink.
Yeah, interesting. And now that you brought something up in that there, which is people are afraid of failing or being singled out as like the old infamous "that's a stupid idea"
Yes.
accusation, and that's a great way to shut people down and stop creativity.
Yes.
And so, and interestingly enough, there's also a fear of success that can enter into there, which is unintuitive, but there are a great many people out there that are afraid of success and that they won't be able to handle it. So
Yeah, that is another creativity blocker. So there's a fear of failure, which is huge, fear of making mistakes, fear of being wrong, fear of the unknown, which I think is the biggest one. But fear of success, that's another huge creativity blocker. Because sometimes it means, one, the imposter syndrome can kick in. Another time, they think they might not be able to handle it. Another time, they think it will mean much more responsibility. Sometimes,
which is a variant of "I won't be able to handle that."
exactly right. Yes, exactly.
I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's I'm not good enough, like I'm not competent enough, or sometimes it goes deeper emotional, like I'll be discovered as a fraud. People will know I really don't know what I'm talking about. Like people have all kinds of layers of programming, and I believe it's all false programming. It comes from well-meaning parents or well-meaning teachers or just society where we're not socialized. Most kids, at least in my generation, we were not socialized to go into divergent space and explore the unknown. We were socialized and educated. There's the one right answer. You have the answer, right or wrong, good or bad, black or white, to more go into binary thinking versus possibilities thinking. And so,
or what we like to call in the technology space, fuzzy logic.
yes.
Instead of true false logic, it's
Yes.
percentage of true or false logic.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. That ambiguous space. That's what I call emergent space too. It's like that space where things will, and in those spaces, things come unexpected. If you allow those spaces, things can come together in an unexpected connection that you would not. That's where the unexpected ahas come. And if you're in an environment, or you yourself just allow that it's okay that I don't have an answer right now. That expression, hold the question. Sometimes hold the question isn't hold it in 10 minutes. It might be you're holding a question for a month or 3 months. Some inventors or creators held a question for years. But and in holding the question, they're discovering new layers and different things around it, or different questions are born from it. But if you become masterful at the art of holding a question, you then can get to get surprised by creativity.
Yeah. And you never know where or who or when that answer will come from.
Yeah.
You might not even answer the question yourself. It could be a person you're having a conversation with. Mm-hmm. If you maybe you bring the question up with them, and then they have the answer you've been looking for, because they're able to see it from a different perspective, a different skill set, different background, and to you, the answer that seemed impossible to find, to them is easy.
Exactly. So one of the mindsets that, if people can get into this mindset, and it's a hard one, it might take time to live into it, but that there's, for our creative unconscious has layers and layers and layers of answers, and that our conscious mind don't. Think of, the way hypnotists work. They will help people become conscious of things that were unconscious. So we all in our and that's why people often get insights in dreams, or a lot of inventions came from the creative unconscious in the dream world. So if you can just imagine that your creative unconscious has so many answers that you don't consciously know, then it doesn't feel as much like just blindly, walking in the dark, but it's more holding a space and exploring and discovering until those answers emerge. And that's the emergence part of creative emergence.
Yeah, I see.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if there is a person who has acknowledged that they have a sort of a fear of failure, or a fear of the unknown, or resistance to the unknown. what would you say is the first step? What would you advise them for the first step to be to move past it? Would it be to create this divergent space or something else?
The first thing I would do is literally, it's something you could practice in 1 minute. And that is think of how you, well, I'll give an example, like one activity I do, and I've done this with senior, government executives and corporate executives, to any frontline staff, to anybody, and anyone. If you walk around your house, move with certainty, you'll see how your body moves a certain way. Then if you move with uncertainty, all of a sudden everybody slows down and they're like shuffling, they kind of go. But then all I will say is turn the uncertainty into discovery. You still don't know the answer, just turn it in, and you see people kind of come up, and now they're open, they're alive, whatever. So if you can get that in your body first, then practice with little low stakes things that don't matter. Because if it's too high stakes, you'll be nervous and it'll be. Start with things that don't have high consequences to you. And then when you start to feel a little uncomfortable with being in the unknown, just say, what can I discover? And then just start going into discovery. Discovery, to me, going into a discovery mindset is a huge way to make uncertainty more comfortable. But definitely start it with something that is low stakes, that wouldn't cause you anxiety. That if you don't discover anything, you're not going to feel nervous, But then all of a sudden, if you practice little low stakes discoveries, it gets you in the habit of not fearing the unknown, but seeing the unknown the way we did is when we were kids. No child is afraid of the unknown. They don't know how to walk. They get up, they start walking. When they fall down, they don't get up and go, I guess I'm not designed to walk. I guess I'm a loser or failure, or they don't even think about it. They just get up and keep discovering until eventually they can walk across. And then eventually they can run. Eventually they can climb. The good news about all creative is we all have that still in us. We've just been socialized out of it. That's all. And so when we can get back into that discovery mindset we had innately as children, the unknown will become a much more exciting and hospitable place.
Now, one interesting thing, regarding what you and Yara were just talking about there is, I actually, have been one of the people I work with, and I've been training on my team. That it was actually a big holdup he's been dealing with for many years in his life, is fear of failure, to the point that would actually paralyze him. And that's something I've spent the last year working with him on. And one of the things I found in my work with him that gave him his biggest breakthrough was actually him changing his mindset on failure from that a failure is a failure, I just ruined everything, to it's an opportunity to learn.
Yes, exactly. I even have many reframes in the books. That's a great reframe. Failure is an opportunity to learn. It's an invitation. It's a great way to become more resilient. And if you look at all the big success stories of business people, they all have failure stories. Every successful person has some major failure stories. The difference between why they went on to be a success or not often is they did not wrap their identity around the concept of failing. They didn't associate that there's a difference between, what I tried did not work, versus I'm a failure. So when someone identifies with being a failure, that makes it much harder than if they're more separate out and I tried something, explored it, it didn't work. What else? In improv, there's a game called New Choice. I'll often say that, or people will often say okay, I tried that, new choice. Let's try that. New choice. Let's try that. Yeah. And so it's not about you personally. It's about an idea, and it didn't work.
And would you say that sometimes reframing questions would help with that. Instead of saying that I can't do that, you should move on to how can I do that? What's the process to be able to acknowledge that?
Oh, that's a great one. So, so we tend to, it's kind of common knowledge. Like we walk around, we get in creativity and creative thinking, we get answers to our questions. So whatever questions how you hold a question can absolutely inform the kind of answers that you receive. So if you're like, is it this or is it that? Then you're going into binary thinking, yes or no, or this or that. And then possibilities thinking could be, or like, it could be, how might I do X, Y, or Z? How might this work? So all of a sudden you went from a binary, one choice or another, into multiple possibilities. Because the truth about creativity, one of the core principles is there is no one right way. If somebody asked, they said, okay, we want everyone, you line up of 50 people and said, everybody just dance across the street in your unique way. It's going to look so different. Everyone can still make it across the street. There is no one right way. We all have a different creative style. So if one thing you try doesn't work, so how might I? And then also, and what else? And what's next? You just start reframing things. You go from closed-ended or two choices into open-ended and multiple options and choices, especially in divergence, because that opens up the exploration space.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually, it is a great thing to talk about is, reframing your thought process from, from a yes or no, or, and I can't do that, I can't use that, to how can I?
Yeah.
Because when you're doing one of them, it's just like, I can't do that. That's it. It's over. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
Your mind just shuts down and doesn't try to find a solution because you've already decided there is no solution. Versus how can I, or, blank. You're now reframing your mental focus into what is the solution to that. Now, you might not find a solution right away. You might not be the one that finds a solution. As we mentioned before, it might be someone else that has the solution, which is, of course, why you want to make sure that people feel open and invited into participating in the creative process and coming up with new ideas, exploring them and seeing, will that work, or how will that work? And if it won't work, well, at least now it won't work, so you know what not to do. Yeah, because you've explored it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, like in the case of, my staff member that I mentioned earlier, and in many other cases, one of the common sources I've found where people get those types of mental holdups, there will actually be that they had a person in their life or currently in their life that suppressed them into that mindset of, I can't do that, I'm a failure.
Absolutely. Or even a thing, depending where you grew up or when you grew up, it might have been the educational system or a certain teacher, or a certain teacher said, oh, you're not the creative one. You should go into, it could be anything, but yes, all of that. So all of these are.
As a kid, I used to have an art teacher that would do that. Do this thing where if she didn't like someone's art, she would say, that was a waste of a perfectly good piece of paper.
Oh,
I mean, what a way to give a person a creative block on art.
It's literally painful to hear. Yes.
Yeah. And it wasn't until many, many, many years later, when I'd grown up and learned about this sort of thing, that I realized that was suppression right there.
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes the teachers themselves, like, they grew up in that belief system, and so they never broke the pattern. A lot of us had teachers that maybe they themselves their creativity wasn't nurtured, so they did not know how to break the pattern. fortunately, in this day and age, there's so much more opportunity, and a lot of people are breaking the pattern. And so reframing is another type of pattern break. And you can look at things, how do I make this into a more generative reframe? And so, also a philosophy is like, if you're going in often ors, think like, well, we want to do this, we have to choose between this or this. Another reframe is, how can we make it possible for it to be A and B instead of just A or B? And so sometimes the changing an or into an and means up leveling your creative thinking to its next level.
Yeah, another common mistake I'll see in that area is mistaking an or for an exclusive or. So, like, good example of that is person A is telling the truth, therefore person B must be lying.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
And that discounts or conversely, I believe person B is telling the truth, therefore person A is lying. And that discounts the possibility that both are lying or both are telling the truth.
So what you're talking about is, and we see this all the time, whether we do it with people or work teams or philosophies or ideas, reduction thinking versus we reduce something to a mono dimension, right, wrong. We reduce it versus generative multi-dimensionalizing. Like, it's possible that A and B both are, telling the truths, but incomplete truths. Some partial but incomplete, or some, or the truth as well as they know it, or from their lens, that is the truth. So, and then when you zoom out, you can often, so that zooming out is another pattern breaking tool. And that is, you zoom out of the minutia and into the more global. And then you can start, diverging, like you're taking, it's almost like you're looking at the problem from a detached lens with complete openness. How is it possible that A, B, C, and D could all be true? Or how is it possible to create something from, and so you're kind of zooming in and zooming out are two kind of tools as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that was a great point there, Jason.
Yeah, and really what this all comes down to is, your mindset and how you're thinking about things, which is something that we've been kind of dancing around. I haven't really said it in that specific wording yet, but
and how you're feeling about it and where your identity is connected to it. So if you were, and it could even, sometimes what backfires is, let's say someone their identity was connected to always having the right answer and being accomplished in a certain way. And so they got very much pat on the back for it and allowed it and applauded and rewarded for, you're the one that always has the right answer. And then all of a sudden they come into creative thinking, their identity is connected to being the accomplished one, the leader, or something. Sometimes it's something, and so they have to unravel an old story or old energy, sometimes or an old emotion connected with it in order to open themselves up to a beginner mind. Because another condition for creativity is when you're going to beginner mind. Where you don't have preconceived expectations, all of a sudden that really opens the playing field versus thinking you already know. If I was going to do creative thinking around something I wanted to create, and I assumed I knew everything about it, there's very little room for creativity to emerge in there. If I go, like, how do I approach this with no expectations and just pure beginner mind? In divergent space, in convergent space, you bring your knowledge back and your expertise back. But in divergent space, you go into beginner mind. And then all of a sudden, you're back, like, exploring like the child.
Yeah, of course, when you're dealing with a person who has, mindset of, I always have to be right, or which oftentimes when you get in those types of mindsets that are what you'd call antisocial behavior driven mindsets, or that drive antisocial behavior, that oftentimes is fueled by not just fear but a very intense fear or abject terror that if I'm wrong, that means somebody else is better than me, and that means they're a threat, and so
Yeah.
I have to be right and I have to make sure that they're wrong.
Yeah, that goes even beyond, regular creative thinking into deeper level of pathologies or mental illness. They're things, if somebody, but in general, yes, many people have an identity connected that if they're wrong, they take it personally. One of the things that I love about improv theater, and why I believe every single person, whether you ever want to do anything with it or not, should just take at least a 6-week or 8-week improv theater class, is it will free you. It will liberate you from any need to look good or be right. Because as soon as you get in that class, you're going to start being wrong so many times. Like you're going to start not having you can't, it will be unpolished. You'll say things that don't make sense. You'll get, you'll practice. By the end of those few weeks, you will not be attached to needing to be right. And when you're not attached to it, that frees you up to go into exploration. So it doesn't have to be improv, but just anything that can detach your identity with needing to be right. And that doesn't mean lowering standards, lowering quality, or wanting to get a solution that is workable and right. It just means in divergence that you don't need to be right, so your personal psychological need to be right doesn't override what your creative self can offer you by way of.
And oftentimes, person that's caught in that type of mindset, which I suspect that was probably what drove the mindset of that teacher mentioned earlier, with that was a waste of a perfectly good piece of paper. It's probably driven by the fear of, if this kid's art is better than mine, then they're a threat to me. So I have to stomp them down and stomp them out to make sure that I'm greater than they are, so that I preserve the dynamic of, I'm the teacher, you're the student, I know best, you know nothing. Which,
yeah, we don't know, and who knows what was in their programming too, right? They might have some idea of, that certainly whatever it was not about how to nurture creativity out of children. That was for sure. We know, they might have some kind of something where, underneath a need to be right is often a terror or a fear of things not working out or losing control. So sometimes people have deep fears of losing control, and that will have them do a behavior that does not support someone else's creativity.
Yeah, exactly. And now if that person's able to heal that thought pattern, what can happen is they can come to realize that that prodigy student that's able to do this art better than you is an opportunity for you to learn and become a better artist yourself, so you can then be a better teacher and teach better artists next time around. And it's all about shifting your mindset from, if this person's more than me, then they're a threat, to, if this person's more than me, then they're an opportunity for me to uplift myself to a higher level.
Exactly. And when we can learn to nurture our own creative self, then other people's creativity becomes less of a threat and it becomes a delight. Because then it's then you can celebrate the unique, because the real truth is we are all infinitely creative, and we all have, we're all unique ultimately in our gifts, skills, talents, ways of creating, how we create, where we come alive. And when we nurture our own and we experience, it makes it much easier for us to celebrate or honor and value other people's. When we're not connected to our own and we see creativity in a limited supply, when we see someone else's creativity and more creativity, then that's where competition emerges. But the real truth about creativity is your creativity is so sourced, it's so ongoing when you access it, and that there really is no competition, because no one can create in your exact way. It's just a matter of having to, access it and give yourself space, time, and attention.
And at the same time, a good, healthy competition is a great way of also unlocking the creativity in a person. Like, for example, in hockey, would we have seen the level of creativity from, say, Mario Lemieux in his prime and the magic he worked with the puck if he didn't have competing players playing against him, trying to stop him from doing what he wanted to do?
Correct. So that kind of competition is one type of pattern break. Like, it's one type of prompt in a way. So sometimes, and also different people have different creative styles. Some people come more alive, introverted and creativity. Others are more extroverted. Some have different. Everyone has a different creative style. So there are people who their creativity does work best when they're in a competitive environment that brings it out of them. So I would say a yes and to all of it, but not everyone is like that. There are other people where you put them in a competitive environment and their creativity shuts down. So some people will say other people and competing with them. And we see this a lot in sports in many places, and in business, help them become a lot more creative. Whereas other people find collaborative or more nurturing or different kinds of environments that bring it up, and other people find more creative in themselves. So I would just say, when you get to know yourself, then you can put yourself more in the environments that bring that out of you.
Yeah, and at the same time, if you are someone that functions best in a nurturing environment, sometimes it could be a good idea to seek out that competition to help build up your resiliency to be able to handle it and rise to the occasion. Because
100%.
Because as the Mighty Mighty Bosstones sing about in their song "The Impression," if you've never been tested, you won't know if you'll pass or not when you are.
And what you're bringing up is even a larger principle around that ties into pattern breaking. So sometimes you can orchestrate pattern breaks that are very uncomfortable for yourself, and that helps build more resilience, because oftentimes life will orchestrate pattern breaks for us. You're like, all of a sudden, I didn't expect that. I didn't anticipate that. I didn't think I'd have to deal with that. Or something completely unexpected and not wanted happens. So that is life, or the universe, whatever it is, orchestrating a pattern break for you. It happens. If you have consciously put yourself into uncomfortable pattern breaking environments, but they're safe, then you develop more resilience, a rubber band like resilience, where you can actually, then when a bit larger, unwanted, unexpected pattern breaks happen, you bounce back, or I like to say bounce forward better. But so yes to that too.
And also the reversal is true. If you're someone who thrives in competition, that might be a signal that sometimes you need to seek out cooperation in order to build your ability to cooperate and be more of a team player. Even if you thrive in competition, you're thriving in competition as a member of a team versus as an individual. But you're mentioning pattern breaks there, so time to tie it back together and talk about your book, Pattern Breaks.
Okay. All right. So here's my book. It's available on Amazon. You can find it. It's a Facilitator's Guide to Cultivating Creativity. And in it, I have, I have mindsets, I have principles, I have practices, I have, it's for facilitators and coaches and leaders, but you could just use it as an individual and do the exercises yourself. And I have preparing yourself, preparing the container, designing workshops, troubleshooting when things don't go well. And then, more a larger picture of how do we co-create a world that works, using these. And then I have 70 pages of templates and exercises from anything from, visual thinking to reframing to technique layering to, so yeah.
Could you please share one technique that would be helpful for young people who have like a cell phone addiction or a social media addiction, an addiction to constant scrolling? or something that could help them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first is, if they have the addiction, like anything you're addicted to, there has to be something that you're going to break a pattern by. What I would suggest is find something you love doing. Like maybe you love painting, or maybe you love something you love doing that you don't need anyone else to do, that you can do on your own. Maybe walking outside. It can be very simple, but it feels good, because it's much easier to break a pattern when you have something to put in its place in that moment. And you might say, I'm going to start every day, and I'll start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes when I want to go into doom scrolling, or I want to go into what that pattern is. I'm going to stop and literally put a clock on, a timer on for 5 minutes, because you could always go longer, 5 minutes or more, and stop, and then go do. So I'm going to stop this and then go do the thing you like. Might even be just like petting your dog or playing with it. It could be, or calling someone, but completely leave the room, or get out of the room where the computer or the phone or whatever the addiction thing is, and do it. And but allow that. You can say 5 minutes or more, that if you get engaged and you do that every day, after a few days, I promise you'll want to do the thing you like longer. And you'll get into a new energetic flow with it. Yeah.
That's nice. That's wonderful.
Yeah, in other words, it's about being present in the moment and doing something that keeps you too busy doing that you don't even care about your phone. And the other thing is, while you're busy doing that, be like, no, I'm doing this thing right now. If my phone beeps or dings at me, just ignore it. I'll pick it up later when I'm finished.
Yes, and for those of us who are not digital natives, we remember what it's like to live without technology or cell phone when you're kind of out there playing or learning or whatever. For people that kind of grew up computer or phone in hand, it is more of a conscious practice to say, I'm going to give myself some digital detox time. And at first they might have to consciously say it, but once you kind of find something that can bring you alive outside of it, or maybe you sign up for a class for something, or do some improv, or do anything, and take a storytelling class, but anything where you don't need your computer, then you'll become more at choice. You won't go into default mode and grab something. You'll go, do I want to do that, or do I want to do this? And that's a first step in creative freedom, is break any kind of pattern that's keeping you out of your own aliveness.
Awesome. Now, to get Michelle's book, we'll be putting a link in the description down below. It's free. You can purchase it on Amazon. Now, if you want a little bit more help than that, and the book actually covers everything we've been talking about in here, and then some.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you need a little bit more help than that, and you want a more personal, one-on-one or one-on-group approach, why don't you tell us how they can get a hold of you to go ahead and...
Absolutely. I do one coaching, and I also do any organizational facilitation all the time. And so the best way to go is creativeemergence.com. The word creative and the word emergence.com. And you could read about, and it's Michelle at creativeemergence.com.
Okay, and again, we'll have her email and website address in the description below. So, Michelle, it's been a real pleasure having you on here, and it's been a great conversation. I think we've covered a lot of great things, as well as given great actionable tips.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
It's been great having you all here. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments down below. We'll do our best to answer them, or either in the comments, or if it's a big question, maybe we'll bring Michelle on for a follow-up episode to cover that question in more detail for you.
Love to.
Also, remember to hit the like button, subscribe if you're on YouTube, follow us if you're on Rumble, and we'll see you all in the next episode in 2 weeks. Bye for now.